be so hard. I thought I could just walk in here and pick a beige and be done, and, or pick a white. Why are there 100 different shades of white? So I'm going to help you with that a little bit today. But while I was working here, I learned from people's mistakes. A lot of people make mistakes. They come in, they tell me this mistake that they made, and I would try to fix it. So that's what we're going to focus on today. One day a woman walked into the store and she said, I wanted a soft butter yellow, but it looked like somebody threw up lemons all over my wall. What's the problem? And I knew how to fix that problem because a couple weeks earlier, someone had painted a warm beige on their wall, and they came in to me and said, I wanted beige, but it looks like a buttercream yellow. What's the problem? Okay? Here's what the issue is. When you mix paint in the paint store, you have a can of white paint, and then when you add yellow tint is kind of like your bag, right? It's really bright. It's so bright that it almost hurts your eyes. And even if you add just a little bit of it to that can of white paint, it's still going to look very lemony yellow. And that's not a buttercream, right? The way you make a buttercream is what you really want is a beige with yellow undertones, because the beige tones down that really bright yellow tint. Then when we moved out of the beige phase and we went all gray every day, okay, this was the next problem that I would hear. Somebody wanted a gray bedroom like this, but the color they chose ended up looking light blue because they had picked a cool gray with slightly blue undertones and it turned out blue, and that's not what they wanted. Or we had somebody that wanted the soft blue, but it ended up looking like the picture all the way on the left, a really bright blue, and they were saying, what's the problem? That's not what I wanted. I picked the lightest one on the blue strip. Well, why is it so blue? Because I learned that from having these issues with the gray, that you need to add gray to that blue to tone it down. So I am wired to tone colors down because that's all I heard every day in the store. And another problem somebody had, a woman came into the store one day and she said, does anybody paint their bedrooms red? I was like, not usually. Why? She said, well, because my husband said I have to pick a color that makes me more in the mood. I can't help you with that. TMI. No, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But what I can help you with is whites. Okay? Everybody says, why are there 100 different shades of white? And in my experience, the colors that I'm doing now all fall into the off-white section of colors because they want a nice light neutral, right? Kind of like the color of this man's sweater back here on the left, okay? Kind of that kind of color. That's what people are looking for, and those are in the off-white, so that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to let you in on a little trade secret that I learned when I was working in the paint store. See this section down here where my little red light is? See how it says off-whites? Okay, this is Benjamin Moore colors. All the paints in that section have an OC before them. It really means off-white color, but it's OC. It should be OWC for off-white color, but they call it OCs, right? All these colors will repeat, not all, some, repeat over here in the beiges and the grays and even some of the light pinks and blues. It's the lightest one on the strip. They'll take a lot of those and they'll repeat over here in the off-white section. All right, so this is an example over here. This is Horizon on the left. 1478 is Horizon, and that comes from right about here. You'll find that strip right over here. But here's Horizon again in the off-white section. It's OC53. Same name, different number, but it's the same color. So what I learned in the store was when I was looking at the off-white, and I wasn't quite sure what exactly are the undertones. Is it a little blue, a little green, whatever? I knew that it repeated over here, so I would look it up, and then you can look at the whole strip of color. Now I know what the undertones are, so that helps me with the off-whites. So a simple Google search, when you look at the off-whites, look up the name, see if it has two numbers, and if it has two numbers, then you know it appears on another strip, okay? It's not all of them. Like pale oak right now, really bubbly in color, that only appears in the off-whites. It doesn't appear, but the majority of them do. So that's my little secret when it comes to choosing off-whites. All right, the thing that we really need to understand is the difference between warm and cool. All right, cool colors are like the color of water, okay? Blues, lavenders, okay, that's a cool color. Warm colors are the color of fire, yellow, orange, red. So every time I start a color consult, the first thing I do is I show them this strip of the historical grays from Century Moore. And the top three are cool grays, they're silvery, and they lean toward being a little on the bluish side. The bottom two are warm grays, okay? They have beige in them, or grayish, okay? So that's Revere Pewter, real popular. Sorry, wrong button. Real popular, a lot of people have heard of Revere Pewter, okay? That's a beigey gray or a grayish, right? So everybody says, I want neutral, okay? Neutral is either beige, gray, or grayish in the middle, okay? So your grays are cool. There's the horizon again. All right, this is an old beige. I used that color a lot 20 years ago. I don't use that type of beige anymore. It's too peachy for most people. But this is where we are now, okay, the grayish. This is what we're doing a lot of, okay? And again, over here, this is just, again, the difference between the warm and the cool. Most people today want an all-white kitchen. But many, many times, I've gone into a kitchen and it's really not white, it's off-white. And you'll see why this all matters, okay? The kitchen on the left is a cool white. A cool white is basically just a white. But the one on the right is a warm white. That's a linen white. It's creamy. It's got a little bit of yellow undertone to it. I'm looking around at the displays, and all the curtains of the displays are all that creamy, sort of linen white type of a look, right? So this kitchen down here on the bottom is definitely not white, but I have clients that think that their cabinets are white. I just had a client last week. She remodeled her bathroom. She told me that her cabinetry in the bathroom was white, but then I looked at her freestanding tub, which was definitely white. I said, no, it's not. She said, what do you mean? I said, when you look at the color of your tub and look at the cabinets next to the tub, they're not the same color. She says, oh yeah, you're right. Now here's where it matters, okay? If you want a white kitchen, but your cabinets are not white, they're creamy, I want you to look at the difference of the color of the windowsill trim. That's white. That's a cool white. And look at the ceiling. That's ceiling white. It's a cool white. Those cool whites next to the warm white cabinets are making the cabinets look beige. Okay? It's fine if you want beige cabinets, do this. But most people don't want beige cabinets, they want the white kitchen, and the reason that they hate their cabinets is because of the trim color. They put the wrong trim color and ceiling color with the creamy cabinets. Okay? And this is just an example of how I show people your cabinets are not white. Just take a piece of white paper and hold it up to the cabinets. The cabinets are not white. Here's where it matters. Anybody remodeling a kitchen soon? Okay. I've seen this mistake many times, where I'll go to somebody's house, and this is why I always want to see your materials before you nail it down and order it. Because a lot of times, people are going to have cabinets that look like this. They're creamy, and then they pick a pure white quartz countertop. And I'll tell them, just so you know, your cabinets are going to look yellow. And they'll say, but I don't want yellow, I want white. I said, well, they're not going to look white because they don't go together. You picked a cool white countertop with a creamy white on the cabinets, and they don't go together. Okay? So I'll send them back. You have to either get a creamier countertop or a whiter cabinet. Otherwise, it's going to look like this by the time you're done. Okay? Now, I do have news for you. This look is what's in there. The white, all white is on its way out, and this is what's coming in. So if you want the beige cabinets, you're good. Right? And in my experience, everybody wants the all white. So if you want the white, this is how it should be. Okay? All right. This house in the center inset, this was a flip. And this builder, he did a good job. He had these grayish colored cabinets. He picked a nice creamy taupey colored countertop, and he picked the right backsplash. He did a great job with the backsplash matching. But here's the mistake that he made. Right here. He did a cool gray in the walls, and the walls are blue. So the new homeowner comes in and said, I don't want blue walls. Why are my walls blue? And I tell them they're not blue, they're gray. It's just the wrong gray. You should have done a grayish on the walls, not the cool, right? And so when people have the creamy cabinets, they'll say, well, what kind of countertop should I get? Here's your answer. This is what you want. You want a creamy countertop like this. I left my notebook on there just so that you can see that they're creamy and it's not a pure white. All right, a lot of people are painting their kitchen cabinets now, okay? The two on the left are not my client, the top and the bottom, okay? When I look at that kitchen, I see an old granite countertop and an old tumbled marble, and obviously you just painted your cabinets white because you wanted the white kitchen, but you only painted the cabinets and you didn't change anything else. My eye goes right to this. All I see is the old stuff. I don't pay attention even to the white. I only see the old. Okay? So white is not always the answer. If you're not going to change, all right, you can't do white. You have to do something creamy or a little bit of color. These are my clients, and here's the difference. These are creamy grayish cabinets, and here you look, it's much softer between the gray cabinets and the beige, backsplash. Okay, here. It doesn't stick out like a sore thumb like this does. Okay, it's a softer transition from here to here. And you'll also notice the islands. I always do color on the island because you got this strong orange color here on the granite, but by putting a stronger color, okay, it helps tone down the granite. Now, these kitchens, they did change their countertop, okay? So you'll notice the two on the right, all right, and I helped them choose these materials as well. I helped them choose the quartz and the backsplash. And because they went with a nice cool white on their countertop and backsplash, they could get away with painting their cabinets white because they used the right, they changed the top, okay? These two kitchens over here, they changed the countertop, but they did not change the floor. They still have the old beige tile floor. And I don't want your tile floor to look dirty. Even if it is, you don't want it to look dirty, okay? So the way you do that is you cannot put a white island on that old beige floor, okay? So by putting color, you put a nice earthy green, and the earthy green goes really well with beige. I always say look at nature when you're painting place. Remember a lot of beige and a lot of wood tones, right? Just think about the leaves. The leaves on the tree and the bark, right? It's the green and the blue sky. It always goes really well with wood tones. Greens and blues are best with wood tones. And beige. Okay. So that was problem number one, is choosing the right way. Problem number two is make sure that you don't just choose a color just because it looks good at your friend's house. Or you went to the mansion in May and you saw, the designer show house and that color looked great. But I put it in my house and it looks terrible. What's the problem? Well, because you don't have the same couch, you don't have the same lighting, you don't have the same stuff. So just because it works for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work for you, right? So these are examples of, these are all pages, colors out of the pages of my book. If you take a look at my book, I will walk you through kitchens, bathrooms, living rooms, dining rooms, family rooms, every single room. We talk about matching everything that you have. This is out of the bathroom chapter. I'm showing you, like if you have a bathroom like this, that you did, that's probably 15 years old. You can't go stick a cool gray in a bathroom like that because it's the same problem with the kitchen. It just looks like, I painted white cabinets, but I still have the same old tile and stuff, right? You have to pick colors that work with what you have, all right? Now this one on the right, this was a remodeled bathroom. She did not do pure white tile. She picked a creamy tile, a little bit of a yellowy undertone to it. You cannot put a cool gray with this kind of tile because now the tile looks yellow. And she wasn't going for yellow. She was just going for, neutral. So by doing a warm grayish with the warm tile, that's the better match. Okay? So you see, everything's about warm and cool. You don't want to mix warm and cool together. This is just another example of, let's say, okay, like I said, Revere pewter, really popular. Oh, Revere pewter looked great in my friend's house. How come I don't like it in my house? Okay, over here, the couch looks pink, and Revere pewter looks green because they don't have the same undertone to them. Right? So this is why it's important to match your stuff and make sure it goes with what's in your house. These samples, you can see right here, it says sample eyes. Has anybody ever heard of sample eyes? Nobody's ever heard of sample eyes? Okay. They are peel and stick samples. They're literally painted with paint, and you can peel it and stick it right on the wall if you want. I don't bother sticking it on the wall because I like to move it around, and that's what those are. Those are just 4 different samples. Okay. Mistake number 3 is choosing the wrong trim color. Here we are again with the warm and the cool. The kitchen on the left has creamy cabinets, and you can see the cabinet maker gave them the crown molding to match the cabinets, but why would you do blue white trim in that kitchen? Why? Look how yellow the cabinets look now, right? They don't go together. Okay? Same thing here on the right. This is another client over here. She told me, and I always hear this, I hate my cabinets. I want an all-white kitchen. I don't have an all-white kitchen. I want because I hate it because I want the white kitchen, okay? So I told her the problem is you've got the all-white trim around the window right next to your cabinets, and you've got the ceiling white on the ceiling. You've got these bright, cool whites next to your cabinets. That's why they look beige, all right? So I matched it, and the cabinets actually match Navajo white. So it's a simple fix. Paint the trim Navajo white. I like to go a little brighter on the ceiling, so I'll usually do like Navajo white cut in half, so it's 50% lighter, right? But it's still got the same creaminess. I'm not putting that cool white next to the cabinets, and I solved the problem. This is a kitchen done correctly. These are creamy cabinets with a creamy trim. You can see the difference because the hallway is a cool white, but here you can see that this is a much better match to the cabinets instead of imagine if this white trim was in here, look how yellow the cabinets are. All right, this is the kitchen that I showed you before with the white trim around the window, okay? This was a young couple. They bought their first house, and as soon as I turned into the dining room and I saw the kitchen off the dining room, I already knew what the answer was going to be, but I asked her a question. I said, how do you like your kitchen? I don't like it. What don't you like? I want a white kitchen. Okay, so I knew how to solve it, and she wanted her husband to pay to have somebody to come in and paint the kitchen cabinets, and he didn't want to pay for it. This is not a very common problem. Okay, men see dollar signs, women want pretty. Okay, all right. So the dining room has all the cool white trim, cool white ceiling, and all this cool white is making this kitchen look really yellow. So I told her this is a simple fix. Actually, the wall color is right. It's a nice warm beige. The problem is the trim color. So I told them all you have to do is paint white yellow on your trim in here and in here. Problem solved. You don't have to paint the kitchen cabinets. All you got to do is change the trim. She's happy. He's happy. Everybody's happy. That's the answer to it. Okay, mistake number 4, sampling. I see this a lot, and I laugh when I go in. I say, please can I take a picture because it's nice artwork, isn't it? I had one time the daughter took all the samples and she lined them all up perfectly like artwork as a headboard behind her bed. I said, I love it. That's the best use of samples I've ever seen. Okay? 2 things that they're doing wrong here. One is lining them all up in a row because what happens is it draws out the undertones in the other color and then you hate all of them. And that's when people call me. They put up their hands and say, I give up, I don't know what to do. Come tell me what to do. Okay? And I'll come in and say, that's too green, that's too pink, this is too dark, this is too light, that's the right one. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. The problem with this one is they painted it over the old color, and the old color affects how you see the scene. So here's how you fix it. Alright, the very first thing you do when you're choosing a paint color is you go to the paint store and you look at the paint chips on the wall, right? But usually the paint store has nice, bright, fluorescent lighting. Does your lighting look like that in your house? Probably not. Okay? I've also seen people take the chip and walk over to the window and hold it in the sunlight and look at the color in the sunlight. And I'll say, is the room you're going to paint have bright sunlight like that? Oh no, it's a dark room. You have to take the chip home and look at the lighting in your room because this is feather gray 4 times and it looks completely different in the lighting in every different type of light. The next thing is you bring it in the room, and this is the same color against 4 different walls in 4 different rooms, okay? So this is paper white, and if you put it, paper white is a cool gray. You put it against a warm color like this in the background, it's going to look blue, especially over here. It's going to look blue against that warm color, right? You're going to put it against a strong color, it's going to look really washed out. So what I do, when I go to people's homes and I do a color consult, I'll take out, I have my whole fan deck of all the colors, and I'll hold it up, but I go over, I find something white in the room, like the trim, the closet door, something like that, and we'll hold it up against the white. Not against the wall, against the white, so that you can see it clean alone, and so that the other color does not affect how it looks, alright? So this is a picture of it against the white trim. This is a picture of the same color against linen white, against a creamy trim with yellow in it, alright? So, and just by showing this, we'll show them how yellow their trim is going to look unless they change the trim. If they really like this color, you're going to have to change the trim to white. Here's the samples against colorful walls. Alright? This one, the one all the way to the left, that's actually gray. They put the color up, and I got a bone color. It's blue. The color's blue. Is it, did you put the sample up? Yes. Did you put the sample on the wall? Yes. Well, the problem is you have your walls are gold and they're yellow, and this is a cool gray. It's the yellow walls that are making it look blue. It's really not blue. If you put it against white trim, it's not going to look blue. So this is when I went over there and I had to put paper all around it and block out the gold so that she sees the color alone by itself. This is the same color. Here it looks blue against the gold wall, but when you put it against white, it looks totally different. Okay? And then, if you are going to put the samples on the wall, the only time I recommend it is if you put a nice clean coat of white primer first and then you can add against white. So this is a newly remodeled kitchen, brand new drywall, it's all primed, nice and clean and white, that's the perfect scenario. Then you can put the samples right on the wall. Right here is how I like to do it, where you see it right against the trim, and it's its own section, so you just look at this color against the trim, you get a good idea of how it's going to look. And I know I said don't line them up next to each other, but this is an exception because this is basically just light, medium, dark versions of the same color. This is just to see how dark do I want the color and which color. Okay? Here's the sample eyes again. This is how I like to do it. I like to put the sample eyes on a piece of white poster board, so it's got a nice white background. You can move it around. Okay? It blocks out this color. See how now you're just looking at it against the white. You're not looking at this against this. And the last one is the finish. These walls here on the right, this is a homeowner that had bought a new house. The previous owner painted semi-gloss on all the walls. Never. Semi-gloss is for the trim, not for the walls. And here you can see why, because you see all the imperfections. Especially if you have an old house with old plaster walls, you don't want shiny walls because you can see every old bad spackle job, every nail head popping out of the wall, okay? Every problem, okay? Now, I used to paint murals and faux finishes back in the 90s, for those of you that remember the sponging and glazing and all of that, right? We used to put a shiny finish on the walls first so that we could slide the glaze around on the walls. And also back then, your choices were flat, eggshell, pearl, semi-gloss. And that didn't exist. So back then, I had 4 little kids. I put eggshell everywhere because you got sticky little fingers touching the walls, right? You want to be able to wash the walls, right? When I went to work at the paint store in 2005, it was right around then that they came out with matte. Matte replaced eggshell. There's no need for eggshell anymore. Matte looks flat, but it's washable. Okay, so now I use matte everywhere. The only time I use eggshell is if you have a kitchen that does not have a backsplash, you don't have tile, okay, and it's paint behind your sink and behind your stove, okay, that's going to get splashed with water and grease, that's when you want to use eggshell, okay, but there's no need to go any shinier than eggshell. Do not put semi-gloss on the walls, okay, not necessary, or it's going to look like this, alright? So flats usually typically used just for the ceilings, because nobody touches the ceilings. Generally, unless you've got a low ceiling in the basement, you got kids bouncing the walls, or if you're walking, maybe they're going to touch the ceiling, but generally you don't touch the ceiling. And maybe in a room like a formal living room that nobody really ever goes in there and even social medias. But honestly, nobody even lives that way anymore. Nobody even does the formal living rooms anymore. People are sticking pool tables in their living rooms, okay? Matte, like I said, everywhere. Eggshell sometimes, right? In the kitchen without the backsplash. Maybe sometimes in a bathroom. You got kids that are splattering toothpaste on the walls, little boys with that aim, right? Okay? That's when you want to maybe use eggshell. But honestly, I even use matte in the bathrooms now. Benjamin Moore came out with this paint called Aura back in Spa years ago. Aura is their top of the line, self-priming, no odor, and it has mildewcide in it, which is the bonus because it kills mold and mildew. So if you've got, teenagers taking long, hot, steamy showers and you're getting all that steam in the bathroom, eventually it's going to get moldy. That's why I use the Aura, okay, on the ceiling as well as the walls. And it comes in a matte finish. When I've tested all these out, I thought for sure I was going to see a mess on the walls with a matte finish. No, it's beautiful. Okay? Semi-gloss is for the trim. Now the pearl satin, if you remodel your kitchen, I'm looking for right over here, you see some samples. If you remodel your kitchen, the cabinets are not as shiny as semi-gloss. They look more like a satin finish. It's a little less shiny. Some people prefer that, so sometimes I will do a satin finish on the trim, a little less shiny, but the only time I use that is when it's a complete gut remodel or a new construction. Because I like all my trim to match. Okay, living room, dining room, kitchen, the whole first floor, I like the trim to be the same color in every room and the same finish. So if it's a complete new construction, sometimes I will use satin on the trim. You'll see builders do that sometimes, but the general standard is semi-gloss on the trim, okay? And then the high gloss is rarely used. Gloss was always an oil-based paint. They did away with oil years ago, okay? The reason people like gloss is because it floats out and it eliminates the brush strokes and it gets a really smooth finish, but it's not good for the environment. So, but there are products out there. Benjamin Moore came out with Advance, which is, it's got a tiny drop of oil, it floats out like an oil, but it's soap and water cleanup, not turpentine. Okay, so there is stuff out there. But I'm not even 0.1% if I ever use a gloss finish. It's always semi-gloss, and maybe 2% of the time they'll done second. So that's it, as a general rule. So it's going to be matte on the walls, semi-trim, flat and smooth. And that's it. So as I said, I have the book out. I've been doing this for 20 years. Everything that I learned in the paint store and going to thousands of people's homes and all the mistakes they've made and everything, I ended up sort of creating a method that I use, like I'm talking about. For instance, I always use matte on the walls. What color trim to use, what to do in your ceiling, what type of paint to use. We go room by room, every room, and I talk about how to choose paint colors for the entire house. I have the book with me. I'm here today, and this is aisle 700. If you go all the way down to the end of aisle 700, the second to last booth on the left, I'm there with the book, and you can contact me there. Anybody has any questions? Yes. I'll play in the back. For exterior, you mean? Yes. Okay. Yep. Anything with paint. Anything with paint. And I'll also help people with floor stains too. Usually when people buy a new house, they want to paint the whole house and have the floor stain before they move in. And we do both. And I can do the whole house in an hour. Boom, done. Wait, hold on. Yeah. Ideally prime it first, and nobody really wants to do that. That's why I put it on a piece of my poster board. It's cheaper. It's $1. It's easy. Right? And a lot easier than priming the walls. Yes. On the first floor, I try to do that because the rooms are all open to each other. Right? Usually you can see the dining room from the living room to the kitchen, right? And I like that ultra slow, the same trim. Once we go upstairs into bedrooms and you go behind a closed door, you can change the trim. Like for instance, let's say your cabinets downstairs are white dove, your kitchen cabinets. I'm going to do white dove on the trim, all right? And I'm going to try to use white dove throughout the whole first floor. But then when we go to kids' rooms, white dove usually doesn't go well with the colors that we pick in the room. Or bathrooms, like you've got pure white toilet in a tub, right? White dove's going to look too yellow in the bathroom. So then we're going to do a pure white trim upstairs. Okay, that's just a general rule. But sometimes the white dove doesn't work in the living room in the dome, right? So if I can, let me go back. I'm using the colors of the same undertones. Yes. See, because then you have this, right? I don't like the pure white next to the creamy in the other room, right? So to me, it's much better look, it's more cohesive if we did the white dove throughout, right? Because you can see one from the other, right? But like I said, when we get to bedrooms, once you go behind a closed door, you can change the trim. Yes. So the ceiling, again, if I do white dove, if there's a crown molding, okay? Because the crown is right next to the ceiling. I don't want white dove trim and then a pure white ceiling white on the ceiling because it makes the trim look yellow. So I'll typically do, but I still like a bright ceiling. I just don't want it a cool white. So I'll usually do white dove 50% on the ceiling. Who does not know what I mean when I say 50%? A lot of people don't know. Okay, so I always say it's like baking a cake. You start with a can of white paint, and instead of putting a full tablespoon of tint, they put in half a tablespoon of tint. So it's the same formula, it's just half the amount, so it just creates a lighter version of white paint. So it just creates a lighter version of white paint. So it still has the creaminess, it's just a little lighter. It's because I don't want to shift over to a cool white.